I support the protests occurring across the country for Black Lives Matter. I have learned with, played with, and against, and worked alongside Black people my whole life. As a person that cares, it does not matter to me about what you look like on the outside. It matters to me more about what you are as a person on the inside. The peaceful protests and demonstrations are extremely powerful, and I hope that it accomplishes the goal of eliminating racial injustice. I also have anxiety, and a new type of anxiety occurs when I see those peaceful protests turn into riots and destruction of property. Now, I don't know if it's my mother's voice or my own telling me to think about the worst case scenario, but I was frozen. Now, as a person of color with this platform, I want to voice my support as I work through that anxiety. And if you are like myself, where you don't know how to take the first step, a good first step is texting Floyd, Floyd, to 55156. Text Floyd, Floyd, to 55156, and then sign the petition afterwards. I have signed the petition, so in case you are all curious. So there is no easy transition from this topic, and I don't believe there ever is or will be. But I do have an episode I want to present that I'm very, very proud of. I found out at a young age that I was very outgoing. I would jump from social group to social group and be able to contribute to the conversations fairly easily. As I grew up, that trait matured, polished up, and got better, and turned into a career in journalism. I wouldn't call myself a journalist yet, but I do see myself as a storyteller, and being able to tell Mark Brooks' story was an absolute blast. Before this podcast was an idea, I wanted to just have a blog because writing was how I got into this industry, and I saw it as a callback to my roots type of thing. And Mark was actually one of the first people I wanted to interview. I met Mark as he was interviewing for a position at Premier Press. And at that time, I had a beard, and it's funny because him and I actually connected over our facial hairs. To this day, it is one of the most interesting ways that I was able to get a friendship started. So once he got the position, we talked a whole lot, and based off some of the stories he's told me, I knew I had to have him on as a guest. So without spoiling anything, if you are listening to this interview through Spotify or iTunes or watching this on YouTube, I hope that you enjoy my chat with Mark Brooks. So, Mark, thank you for sitting down with me. And, you're sitting at home, I'm sitting at home, or you're virtually sitting with me. So we met when you came into my then work at Premier Press, where you currently are. We had a connection. I felt like we had a pretty strong bond off the get-go, mainly because we had facial hair. Like, I had a beard. I grew it sporadically. You still have your beard, and I think it was a little bit longer. So I have to ask you, what makes a perfect beard for you?
Oh, on me or just in general?
Just in general. Like when you see like an actor, it's like, oh, that's a great beard. What are the criteria?
It's this right here. The fact that I can't grow this makes that the thing that I want, the thing that I need in my life. It's got to be everything. Mm-hmm. I do like it, kind of tight on the sides and then kind of coming down a little bit.
Yeah.
You're straight up looking at Corona beard right now, so it's all done by myself and not very well. But this would be the part that if I could change that, that would be my perfect beard, having the chin in.
Yeah, like when growing up, that part for me, like right underneath the bottom lip, that wasn't as much hair as it is today. But once I started shaving, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, just start shaving," and then start puffing up. The peach fuzz goes away. I was like, that's a lie. And I started doing it. I was like, holy crap, they were right. Oh, man.
I remembered recently my first ex-girlfriend when I was 16. I tried to grow a beard when I was still with her when I was like 18, and I remember saying at some point like I was stubbly.
Mm-hmm.
It was gross and nasty and not nearly as glorious as this, but she was like, why aren't you shaving? And I said, well, I'm going to grow a beard. And she said, that's ridiculous. And I said, no, it's rugged. And she just laughed.
Yeah.
And if you had seen me clean shaven, you would appreciate that laughter. Because I don't look good clean shaven. I have a well, I guess you can still see the scar. That it just kind of adds to that. But yeah, I kind of have a baby face, and I would look probably 10 years younger if I didn't have the beard. But I feel like this is good for Northwest living.
Yeah, yeah. You get the beard like around the chin, like the jawline, and then throw on a flannel and maybe a man bun. Then there you go. You're perfectly fitting in
Oh,
Oregon.
that's the other thing I can't do. Yeah, there's not much left up top anymore. Is why I'm wearing the hat. I got a meeting on Monday, and I told my client, I was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, but Corona hair, and I'm gonna wear a hat. I'm just telling you now." And she's like, "That's all right. Half my head is gray, and the other half is black. So, yeah, everybody's got Corona hair right now."
Yeah. So I guess 2 interviews ago, I decided to rock a mustache because, this is again, I think this was in April, and coming from University of Oregon, Prefontaine, Steve Prefontaine's a big thing.
Glorious
And
mustache.
the mustache, I was like, I'm gonna run like Pre, and that it kind of worked, but also didn't at the same time because my lungs and my legs can only go so far and so fast.
Yeah. You probably aren't him, even though you have the mustache, but you do carry a glorious mustache whenever you have one.
Thank
I
you.
do appreciate your mustache. Mine doesn't work out that well, so good on you. If you just wanted to rock that, you could pull it off.
And what was your girlfriend's name again?
Jenny.
Jenny, what is her? Has she seen you clean shaven? And does she just all for the beard?
So we've known each other for 16 or 17 years. We were friends for most of our lives, or our relationship together. And she has seen me clean shaven. Yeah. Um, I think she likes the beard. You can always tell because, they'll
Mm,
just kind of come in here and do that, which
mm,
feels great when you have a beard.
yeah,
So
because
yeah, I think she likes it.
that skin's untouched. It doesn't feel the fingers like your
Hmm.
own, or just doesn't feel the breeze. So
Yep,
someone else does it, you're like, oh, hello.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
nice. So, um, so yeah, So again, going back to where we started, I met you when you were trying to interview for the account director position at Premier Press, where you are right now.
Mhm.
And then I think after you got the position, we talked a little bit, and you said you're from Pennsylvania, specifically Biglerville. Am I saying that
Yeah.
correctly? That's a how was growing up in that small town? Because you said you are a small town guy.
Yeah, I mean, I look around the rural parts of Oregon, and I think that this is very similar to the land that I grew up in, with minus the mountains, not even the coastal range. It's low-slung hills, rolling, lots of farms. We're talking about South Central Pennsylvania. So, yeah, I actually was when I was born, I was living outside of a town called Bendersville. That's the small brother to Biglerville. Um, Coincidentally, I actually lived basically on the same road further down. There's another town called Littlestown, and I lived there too. So kind of capping at both sides.
Yeah, you really are.
But Biglerville it's a canning town. The county that I grew up in, Adams County, and it's right on the border of the Mason-Dixon line, right in the center of the state. And it's the highest grossing apple country in the world. Now, New York State, Washington, and tons of places in Asia produce more apples in a larger area than Pennsylvania itself. But our little area in Adams County produces more than any other place in the world. So, having 7 fruit packing plants around me, that's what I knew. I always had orchards in my backyard. I always had, fruit available to me to just walk up into the hill and grab some apples or peaches or cherries. So, my childhood was a lot of mountain biking to get around to see friends who were miles away. And it was great. I had a creek that I could walk in and fish in. I was not a big city guy. My parents both came from Chicago, so they were big city people and didn't understand the things that I was learning about being in the country. And so I think I grew up a little bit alien to them. I came home one day and my mom, I don't remember the context, but she was asking me if I wanted something. And I said, not so much. And she said, what did you say? I said, not so much. And she said, where did you learn how to say that? I was like, I don't know. I just picked it up. It's Pennsylvania Dutch. And I speak it and I don't even know it. But I have a little bit of their accent sometimes, even though they don't have much of one. So growing up was weird. I had city parents that didn't know how to really operate in the country, but my dad was a heavy gardener, and that's kind of where I get my green thumb from. And they made it theirs, and they still live in Biglerville to this day. So yeah, that's and also Gettysburg. I should talk a little bit about that. Gettysburg is it always has been about 15 minutes away from where I grew up, and it's a war town. You had to learn the 3 days of the battle in order to graduate elementary school, high school, and if you wanted to work anywhere in town, you needed to know because people were going to ask you. And when they asked, why don't the statues have bullet holes in them? You better have something creative to say. I never worked in the tourist industry, thank God. That is a soul-sucking way to grow up, but I did know people that did, and oh man, it's dealing with people who don't understand, that there is a community that wants to exist outside of a civil war. That's difficult to get people to understand, but it's helped me be a tourist in other places. Because you see all the stupid things that people do when they come into your town and make your town twice the size during the summer that it would normally be. Interestingly enough, okay, so the Battle of Gettysburg happened over the July 4th kind of time period, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Immediately after that, so we have July 4th, we have the reenactments, and then the week after that, we have Gettysburg Bike Week. And so I tended during the summer to stay away from Gettysburg, and that did me pretty well. And I got lots of space out there. I'd go to the city or something. That would be my vacation, is going to the city.
So have you spent any summers, like have you been a part of that festivities, July 4th, Gettysburg at all during your childhood? Or you just, anytime that happened, you guys just bolted?
So I had some friends that were reenactors, and one time I went to the reenactment. I'd never go again. I actually saw, it was July 4th weekend, and so it's hot. It's extremely humid in Pennsylvania. I mean, we're talking 90 degrees with 90% humidity. You can eat the air almost. And yeah, people were just passing out left and right, and we're like, man, they're really good actors. No, then the ambulance would have to pause everybody, roll out into the field, pick up a couple people, and then get out. I mean, they didn't coordinate getting the horse-drawn carriages to go pick people up, so it looked more period. But yeah, that was my one experience at a reenactment. Yeah, otherwise, we'd go to the Outer Banks for vacation. New Jersey Shore was a place where you went when you were a teenager, and you got away from your parents. But the parents wanted to go to the Outer Banks because it was more family oriented and, beachy scene, hot beach, warm water is a good place to be. I've tried to do the water around here and realized I need a wetsuit or something.
Yeah.
Maybe I just haven't found the right place.
Yeah, summers in Portland, they have been, I would say like 80% sunny days, like a good solid 20% has been like downpour rainy days, but it's been more sunny than rainy in my years of living here, before college and after college. So yeah, those reenactors, those are real true authentic clothing too, and those things were thick, I assume. Wool. Yeah. So the people in the ambulance never thought about painting a horse on the side? I mean, there you go. Horse of the 21st century.
I would say they had some old ambulances they could do that too. I don't know. I don't think it was that bad at other years. But yeah, the cannons shoot flour, and so you get that stuff all over you too, and it doesn't help with the breathability of the wool clothing. It's still the funniest thing to me, and even being from there, I thought it was pretty funny when you'd roll through. You always knew it was the start of Toron season when you see the people in wool clothing in the summertime walking the streets of Gettysburg, randomly, not paid to do this, just I'm going to put on my Sunday best hoop skirt and go out in Gettysburg and walk around and have people talk to me. I mean, that's cool, but not cool because it's 90 degrees and you're wearing a, wool blanket.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I never really got into that. I had a lot of friends who were part of it. Their parents drug them into it. I had a friend who was a arms dealer, so he
The good kind.
dealt
The good
in
kind.
the Kentucky Rifles and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's awesome. So I want to go back to something you said while you were talking about your childhood in Biglerville. You said you were around orchards a lot and then orchard packaging. Now, is that where your passion or where you decided you wanted to get into the print industry and do packaging specific,
Hmm.
or is there another way that led into that field for you?
So high school was where it kind of came to me. I liked computers. My parents got an Apple IIc when I was, I don't know, 10 or 11 or something like that. I really liked that. When I got to high school, I had a graphic arts teacher who was great. Funny story about that guy. Uh, his name was Mr. Warwisak, and he was the soccer coach at Gettysburg College. And their women's soccer club was really, really good, like nationally good, which is weird for Gettysburg because that university it's not like a well-known university for sports. I don't know how they rank in the NCAA.
Hmm.
But anyway, he quit his job after I was with him for maybe 2 years, and he taught me a lot about all the Adobe products at the time, although it was Aldus PageMaker and there wasn't there wasn't InDesign yet. There was Illustrator and Photoshop, but the very rudimentary versions of it. And I really liked that. When he left, I was on his computer doing some projects and I was surfing around and I found a file and it just said ACG. And I opened it up and it was the Nike ACG logo.
Oh
He actually
yeah.
designed that and went to work for Nike soon after. And that's why he left, which I thought was really, really funny because, again, Oregon based, and he ended up here at some point, or I think he was working remotely for a while. But yeah, he got me into it. The next guy coming in knew nothing about computers. And so I kind of taught him how to run a printing press. I taught him how to burn plates, taught him about photography. He was just an industrial arts guy. He knew welding and things like that. So actually teaching the teacher got me through my last 2 years of not really feeling like doing anything. I would just spend all of my time with him and he would give me good marks. And, I was learning a lot while doing it. And when I graduated, I was trying to figure out what to do. And this is going to segue a little bit, but I really wanted to get into forestry. We have a strong forestry program from Penn State, and it was kind of in my backyard. That's what I thought I wanted to do. So I took a gap year and I moved out to Western Maryland to be a raft guide, a river rat. And when I came back, I needed a job. And one of the companies that had given me an award in high school for graphic arts gave me a job. And it turned out that I ended up working with a lot of those people kind of in one job or another as I moved through the printing industry. Printing is very incestuous and everybody works for everybody. So yeah, I ended up meeting those people later on in life at different places. So I started there as pre-press, and that's kind of what I did for most of my life, most of my career in printing. I didn't end up going down the forestry path because my second job in the industry was working for a very large printer on the East Coast. I won't name names, but they were paying for my schooling. I actually started, and I made it through 2 semesters, and then I kind of sat back and I was talking to a counselor, and I was like, "So how much do park rangers make?" And I realized that I was already making more than that, and I'm like, I love the woods and everything, but I also like toys. So hard to buy a snowmobile or a four wheeler or something like that, or a motorcycle on that kind of salary. So I kind of said, okay, well, I can still do the things that I want to do. I just need to earn money so that I can do them. And so that's how I kind of pushed through in the printing industry. And I was in Gettysburg for a long time. I actually got a job. I was almost out of printing, and then I found a job doing customer service and sales, and that's where I wanted to be because I like dealing with clients, and I was good at it. And after some back and forth and spending about 2 years in pre-press and running copiers, I finally was like, look, I'm going to leave if you're not going to make me a salesperson. And they finally did. So I did that very happily for, I'll say 6 or 7 years before coming to Premier. And Premier is different. So back to your original question about packaging, I, didn't do any packaging until Premier, and Premier packaging is way different than your typical packaging for sure. So it's a new world to me, and it's actually very interesting. It's kind of refreshed uh, my love of print. So it's not a bad thing at all. And I'll say that the packaging industry in Pennsylvania, as it pertains to fruit, isn't really put it in a box and it goes. This is like most of the apples got turned into applesauce or apple juice and then shipped overseas. It's remarkable how very little of our own production was available to us as locals. There's a co-op that basically ran the entire county. A lot of the farmers just gave their 100% of their orchard to the co-op. They got money to operate back, and they made a living doing that. But all of that got turned into apple juice and sent over to China. And China has a ravenous appetite for apple juice, let me tell you.
Well, they say an apple a day does keep the doctor away. An applesauce cup a day probably does something over there for them that we have no idea what it does for us here.
Yeah. I mean, hey, they live long, right? I don't know.
This is true. So you said that once, going back to high school, once your design teacher who designed the ACG logo left, that you actually were teaching the new professor some of the tricks, or basically what you learned. That's got to be hard for a kid like 17 that's trying to make it through high school to actually have to show the teacher how these things, because the expectation is that the teacher knows everything, or knows at least 2 or 3 steps ahead. How were you dealing with that mentally, as well as trying to have a childhood and trying to have a teenagehood and just making your way through life?
I have a very healthy ego, and so I took it as an ego massage to be able to teach the teacher. So honestly, at that point, I was so I had like phases in high school where I wanted to do really good, and then of course you get in with the wrong crowd and grades dip and whatever. When the new teacher came along, I was in a phase where I was like, you know what, I should probably try a little bit harder because I got a life after this, and whether that means college or not, I need to get my grades up, or otherwise I'm just not going to make it. So I was actually trying, and he was like, look, if you teach me how to run the printing press, maybe do like a couple classes with me, and you can help me. I'll give you all the work study that you need in order to graduate. I'd done all the math that I needed to do. I stopped at like trigonometry. I was like, math isn't fun anymore when you get to trig. Love geometry, but that's about as far as I wanted to go with it. So I kind of maxed out on that. The sciences, I was still like heavy into whatever science I could get into because I love that. But social studies, I maxed that out. I just didn't have much left, and I needed to take up space in the high school in order to graduate, and that was the perfect way to do it. So I didn't mind it all. I actually enjoyed it. Kind of honed my skills of teaching people how to do things and interacting with others on a level where you're instructing. It's not an easy thing to do. I envy teachers. They have a way about them that I just don't have. But I learned a little bit about how to instruct people how to do things, and that's definitely served me well later on in life.
Do you still keep in contact with these professors? I know it's life is crazy from high school to where you are today, but some people are pretty persistent with keeping up with their professors.
I don't, but what I'll say is my mother was a teacher in the same high school that I went to. So when I visit, a lot of times she'll have a bunch of my teachers over for brunch, and I'll be forced to interact with them. So that's good enough. Yeah.
We're good. I don't need your email address or anything like that.
No. You get the Hotmail address.
That's it. How was that gap year you took?
It was crazy. I moved out to Western Maryland with a couple guys who they were involved in the adventure sports program in my high school. So they were already running rafting trips. In fact, the raft companies around the area we moved to, the river was called the Youghiogheny. It's one of the ones that flows up into Pittsburgh and is one of the 3 rivers with the Monongahela and the Ohio.
Hey, geography.
So Yakagani has a couple different sections: top yak, upper yak, middle yak, and lower yak. The lower yak is where you do commercial rafting. I was like, I can be a raft guide. I watched these guys. I'm a hell of a crew member, and they'll teach me the rest. It'll be fine. And it was fine. I learned despite my own inequity, and it was mostly because they kind of got me through. They were my guides, and they knew what they were doing, and they went on to the one became a rep for a kayak company. He's living in Jackson Hole. And the other one still kayaks today. I don't have a shoulder, so I can't do it anymore. Story for later. But yeah, like it was, I started to train to be a raft guide, became a raft guide. I did 3 trips. And on the 3rd trip, I had 6 overweight elderly women who did not paddle at all and made it extremely hard on me, and then didn't tip me after I did all the work. So when I was carrying their 16-foot raft on my head up out of the takeout, I decided, yeah, I don't really want to do this anymore. I'll come to the river for fun. This is making it not fun. So I had a friend who was working for a helmet company. They made Kevlar reinforced fiberglass helmets. It was 2 hippies that ran it. He's going to graduate from MIT with a industrial engineering degree of some kind. And he, right before taking his finals, decided to go on tour with the Grateful Dead.
What?
Yeah. So he was just a river rat for his entire life. And cool. He didn't need much. He just wanted the river, and he did this fiberglass stuff. So I went to work for them, making helmets in a poorly ventilated basement for about a year. And I really liked that work. They were really nice people. And anytime it rained or snowed, we went out. So it was a company outing day. So that was a lot of fun. But being hippies, after about a year of working for him, it was tax season. He came back to me and he said, Mark, I don't know how to tell you this, but I really haven't been taking taxes out of your paychecks. So you owe the government more than you have in savings right now. And
Oh.
I was like, well, shit, I guess that's my time.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, so it was a great year, kind of a lost year. I spent it on the river, as in groups of very smelly river people, and it was glorious. It was fantastic, and I could never do it again. But I learned a lot over that time, and after that, I moved back, and yeah, that's when I started imprinting.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Now, I've gone flowing down the river, both in my College of Eugene, 2 hours south, and then I believe in the Sandy Clackamas River area.
Yeah.
There are times where I see the map. I'm crazy enough to think maybe if I just flow along this river, I can get back to Portland, Oregon. Just go to downtown.
Yeah.
Do you have that thought when you were rafting and whatnot? Like, oh, if I just follow this, I can go back to civilization.
Yeah. So I've got I grew up with the Susquehanna in my backyard too. And Susquehanna is like a mile wide. I mean, it's the Columbia and then some, but it doesn't move as fast. The CFS, I mean, it moved millions of gallons per minute, but like it doesn't really move. In some places it just sits. So there were plenty of times fishing on the Susquehanna or floating on it. And you think, I could just ride this all the way to Harrisburg, which you can't. There's low head dams everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's that kind of thing. But yeah, I've definitely had that before. The kayaking that I've done has been on very steep creeks, class 5, class 4 whitewater. I'm actually, I was a raft guide, and I've been on the river a lot in my life, but I don't like deep water. I like to be able to stand up in it. So the stuff that I like to do is creeks. It's 15-foot waterfalls, drop pool, that kind of thing. And there was no mistaking on a creek that you were very far from civilization. The bigger rivers, of course, go into even bigger rivers, and they end up in cities and things like that. But on the creeks, yeah, there was some sketchy times. I got a bullet hole in one of my kayaks one time, being on somebody's land that they thought was theirs, and nobody owns the water, but they had a gun, so they owned the water. West Virginia is a funny place. It's very easy to get lost in West Virginia and meet people that are not as friendly to outsiders as a place like Portland. Mm-hmm. So yeah, most of the time I went to the water to get away and to not think about being close to the towns or the cities. But there were definitely times when, for instance, I really enjoyed the Deschutes River and floating through Bend. That's kind of fun. You're in it's not a city, but it's a big town, and it's got, houses down on the water and everything. And uh, that's a different experience than I'm used to. I'm used to being in the middle of nowhere, and oh man, don't get injured, because getting out of there is going to be a problem.
Yeah, I have not floated the Bend or Deschutes River. I have been to Bend, so I know that it's a nice blend of country with city life, and it has that kind of Mount Hood or just mountainous ski resort lodge look to a lot of the stores. So
Yeah.
I was like, huh. I have two friends that live there, so I could see myself having some fun there, especially if I'm outdoorsy and fun like you. So yeah, yeah, just don't float from civilization all the way down the river. So
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, Bend is a great place. It's a great jumping off point for a lot of different activities and things like that. You might find yourself later in life needing, calming experience, and it's something that I'm looking at right now, and I'm thinking about like fly fishing and things like that. That seems kind of amazing to me. But on the other hand, yeah, you can do the adrenaline sports too out of Bend.
Yeah.
You should spend more time there. You'd like it, and the bars are great. The breweries are great.
Oh
There's
yeah.
a couple cideries. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of good times in Bend.
Yeah, I went to go visit Ben recently, and the breweries were fantastic. 10 Barrel is probably my favorite one, and they were close to where my friends were living, and it was just walking distance. I remember it was kind of cold, and then we go there, and I've been having beer since like 10 a.m. So I was in a comfortable zone.
Mhm.
I just remember I was eating like they had a beer sampler kind of slab, and as I was working through that, I just looked outside. All of a sudden, it was starting to snow, and it didn't stick, but it was just like it was snowing. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. I actually kind of like this. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's a thing I've noticed around this area is weather is very unpredictable.
Yes.
I mean, it can be 90 degrees in Portland and 45 out on the coast, and you sandblasted if you try and go out on the beach, thinking, "Oh, it's going to be a good beach day because it's hot in Portland." Nope.
Nope. Nope.
It can be, it was the other day, it was 80 degrees in Portland and I was skiing up at Mount Hood, or, down around Sisters in Bend. There's still snow here well into the summer, and that's
Yes.
great. I love that.
Yeah. So how has all the outdoor activities that the Portland, Oregon area they have, in high demand, how has that satisfied your love for the outdoors, love for all this nature
Oh,
activities?
it's fantastic. The first thing was I knew about Hood. I wanted to go to one of the Burton camps when I was a kid, and do the Windells or whatever Cascade camps during the summer. I thought that was great. I also thought that there were other resorts that were open a little bit later, and there are some, but British Columbia, that's kind of where they stay open as long as Timberline. Um, Moving here, I was like, oh, that's right. I could be a ski patroller at Mount Hood and basically patrol all year and be on snow all year, minus maybe 2 months.
Mhm.
So that was like the first amazing thing. And then I was like, I've always had the attitude of there's so many lifts in the world that I have not ridden. Why would I go backcountry skiing? It's dangerous. I got to go uphill. Why would I go uphill? I just want to go downhill.
Yeah.
Um, that's the thing that has changed me the most in my adventure sports career, I guess, is coming here and seeing the beauty of the area. It isn't just about going down. You've got a lot to gain from going up, other than just altitude. So I've really enjoyed that, and that's the biggest change in my life. I have a split board, and I go uphill now, and I'm not that guy saying I'll ride the lift. It's okay.
Yeah, because riding lift, it's supposed to, yeah, going uphill while you're carrying skis and also in snowy weather conditions. That's not fun. But yeah, going uphill when it's 90 degrees on a beautiful sunny day and got great hiking spots, open scenery. There it is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's actually easier than hiking. The motion is better on your knees if you're getting older and you're worried about your knees, and it is easier going uphill on skis than it is
Hmm.
hiking. So,
Hmm.
hopefully there's time yet this season to go to. I want to try and summit South Sister, If I don't get it while there's snow, I'm gonna get it later while it's hiking season. But that's another thing. I've learned a lot more about my ability to do things that I didn't think that I could do. I moved here not in the greatest of shape. I'm still not in great shape. I'm probably in better shape than I have been in the past decade. But I've really surprised myself. I've pushed myself, and I haven't really reached the limit yet. So that's something that I enjoy doing more than I thought I would, exploring my limits physically and trying to get out there. I'm not a runner. I don't know how you do it. I can't. I get it like a mile and my lungs are coming out of my throat. I can't do it. But I can easily go and do a 10-mile hike and feel great afterwards. So I think maybe that's how you age, is you don't do the high impact thing anymore. Your stamina can spread out a little bit better.
Yeah, no, that's amazing that you're able to see this growth since you've been, in Oregon. How, when you talk to your parents, and do you tell them about this? Have you tried selling them on coming to Portland, or are they pretty set on Biglerville?
Yeah, they're set. I've had those conversations. My dad, he shouldn't be alive right now. He's got a third of his lung. He had lung disease his entire life. Never smoked a day in his life. So he's always had health problems. He's usually moved around with his family because, he lived in Arizona for a while. He lived on Catalina Island. He's an interesting guy. But my grandparents moved him around because he had really bad asthma and really bad lung condition. So Pennsylvania isn't great for that, trust me, but they aren't going anywhere. He doesn't even really fly anymore. My mom's had a femur fracture later in life, and so she's had knees redone. She's doesn't get around as well anymore. It's going to be a chore for me to get them out here just to visit. So they're not coming out this way. They don't appreciate verticality. They're both afraid of heights. I kind of am though too. But they didn't ski. They've never ridden a motorcycle. They don't like fast cars. They don't even have sharp knives in their kitchen. They are very risk averse people. So a lot of the times I'll show them pictures of the things that I've done, and my mom will just say, "Don't show me that. I don't want to know." Yeah, they don't like some of the stuff that I do. The motorcycle racing was probably the worst of it. My argument was always, well, I'm not riding on the road now. My bike isn't street legal. I only ride it at the track. It's a controlled environment. Everything is. And then I go and separate my shoulder in a motorcycle accident when I haven't had many injuries in my life. So that was enough for them to be like, "You're not having a bike if you're living in our house," type of thing. So yeah, they're very risk averse people. They're happy where they're at. They've got a good basis. My brother still lives in the area. He lives 2 miles away. My one niece lives with them. So yeah, they've got family. They're good. They've got friends. They don't want to leave, and I don't want them to leave. I would love to have them here. I think they would really enjoy it. But at the same time, they love where they're at, and just like I'm learning to love this area, I wouldn't want somebody to be like, "And you should just come over here," you know. But I'm sure they miss me. I miss them. So hopefully, when this whole thing is over, I can go visit them. I still have to move my I have a storage unit that I need to empty out, and they need to give me a whole bunch of their stuff because they're at that point in their life where they're like, I don't need 6 paintings of whatever your childhood. We're going to give those to you. And here's a big hunk of wood that was in our garage. I think you touched it once, so you should own that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how parents usually are. They're like, "Hey, you interacted with this item one time
It's
in
yours.
your 30 years of living. It's
Yeah.
yours now." It's like, "Come on, mom." Yeah.
Yep. I got to truck all that across country, which that'll actually be a fun trip. I like driving. So the first time I came out here, I did it in 3 days, 15-hour days. I'm going to do it in 2 days coming back and try and make that happen without falling asleep or whatever. The only reason why I stopped the first time is because I had 2 cats and they were terrified of the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I won't have them this time.
Yeah, one of your cats popped up in the background earlier.
That
So
was probably Rue. Yeah.
So my mom is very risk averse like your mom as well. She's always thinking about this could happen if this happens. She just thinks of the worst case scenario, which is what she always says to me. And it's engraved in my brain up to this day. Now, with your mom being the same way, how are you able to kind of tune that out and still be able to be as adventurous and as semi-reckless as you have been to this point in your life?
Um, Friends that push you too hard,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Most of the things that I've done were because friends, I would say push is a strong word, but yeah, pretty much. I would say I didn't know how to kayak when I moved to Western Maryland and became a river rat. It was something that I knew about myself. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and when I get into something, I get into it. And I do this with hobbies all the time where I buy all the gear and I buy all the best gear and I spend all this money, and then I do it for a couple years and then I grow tired of it and move on to the next thing. So as I'm spending my own money now, I start to kind of really think about the things that I want to do with my life. So with kayaking, it took a while, but they convinced me and I got into it. And it took me from, it was April to, so it was like 3 months to go from not kayaking at all to going to class 5 whitewater. That is not something that anybody should do, and I'm not advocating for that. I did it. I made it down the whole river without swimming, although I tore all the skin off all my knuckles by rolling my kayak back over every time I flipped over. And my helmet has all these deep gouges in it. I still have it in a rack in my house to remind me, hey, you should probably think a little bit harder about doing these things. But it's, again, an accomplishment that I won't ever do again. But I wouldn't have done it without support from my friends and training from my friends and them saying, you're fine. It's just falling down. That's all. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I've done a lot of crazy stuff. Getting into motorcycle racing was not a thing that I did on my own. I did it with friends. I friends of friends that I met that were motorcycle racers, and I was like, that sounds amazing. Imagine the stories I can tell with that. And started kind of going to track days with him and learning how to do it. And then I got my own bike prepped for it and did that for a while. Paintball I got into, competitive paintball, because a friend took me to a birthday party where we did paintball. Immediately bought the gear after that and was like, I'm going to do this now. And I did that for a while. So that's a big old bag in my garage that isn't being used right now. All this stuff, my parents are like, I think they might have thought that it was like candy. If you give your kids candy when they're growing up, they won't eat as much candy when they get older. If you deprive them of candy, that's all they're going to want when they can buy their own groceries,
That's, yeah.
And that was kind of me. As soon as I could, when I turned 18, I think within a month of turning 18, I bought my first motorcycle. My parents still don't know that in high school when I broke my thumb, it wasn't skateboarding, which they also didn't like. It was I flipped a friend's motorcycle at their house. They didn't know that I was riding motorcycles. My mom still doesn't know that story.
Well, I assume you'll probably tell her that you're on this podcast, and I assume being a mother or knowing my mother, how she's been listening to all my episodes, she'll probably listen to yours. Now she's going to know. You're probably going to get a call a little bit after this gets released.
Ooh, maybe that's a good point. I was going to tell them about this, but now I'm revealing too much.
So competitive paintballing, what's that scene like in Biglerville? And then have you maybe thought about bringing it over, because you said it's in a garage? Have you thought about maybe trying to rediscover that competitive side of you here in Oregon?
Yeah, so when I started, it was motorcycle racing was my hobby at the time, and my roommate at the time was way into it with me. He's got a very OCD approach to hobbies as well. So we were hand in glove. I mean, we were on it together. We got a trailer, we got our bikes race prep, tuned, and all that stuff. And we were doing track days, and it wasn't enough. And so we got into motorcycle racing. And I didn't race much. He took it a lot further than I did. But one of my first races, legitimately, it was a league called WERA, Western Eastern Road Racing Association. And it was a tune-up race. So it was our little club that allowed in AMA motorcycle racers because they were going from New Jersey at the time over to mid-Ohio. So they were stopping through West Virginia, and they were just going to do a weekend tune-up in between races. So here I am on my second or third race, I think, and I have Josh Heron, who at the time was racing 600cc motorcycles, and he won that year in the AMA. He lined up next to me, and I got lapped twice in my first lap, and scared the shit out of me. I really, it was after that that things didn't. I was like, I'm never going to be that good. Those guys are aliens, and I'll never be that good. And I'm starting not to enjoy it as much. The next race was the one where I actually separated my shoulder. I high sided, flipped over the top, trying to save the bike, and out went my shoulder. So after that, I went back to one more race afterwards. Wasn't the same. Wasn't having fun. I would still go back and do track days, but that switching of gears left a space. And I thought, well, paintball's fun. And I like doing the woods paintball. You'd go out into the woods and shoot each other, whatever. It was a lot of fun. And I was starting to become a regular because of my OCD at the local shoosty place, as we called it. And we would, play twice a weekend, and I'd spend a lot of money on paint. And then I started going to the more competitive area to play paintball down across the border into Maryland. And they actually had a professional team there that practiced. They're called Baltimore Revo. And they're like the closest professional paintball team around. Then there were also these other teams and clubs that were playing up to about a Division II level. So I'm like, I'm in a team, whatever, we'll play Division 5 and get into it. Well, we were actually pretty good. We didn't win any the first year, but we got a couple second places. So as you go, you progress, and I was Division 4, and I started knocking on the door of Division 3, and I was just like, I'm a 30-plus-year-old guy. Most of the guys doing this are in their 20s. They're in way better shape than me. They can sprint from a standstill and 20 feet later be like sliding into a bunker without jabbing their gun into the ground and killing themselves. And, that wasn't me. I was a back player. I basically came up off the start and just stood there and tried to get people running out to the corners. So, I did that up until the point where I didn't feel I was competitive anymore. And I would bring it here. There's a couple of fields around. They mostly do woods ball. There is some semi-pro teams. There's one up in Edmonton. That's probably the closest. There's a couple in California. There's none in Oregon. There's a Washington team. But there's a bunch of like divisions that play around the area. So I might get into it. I've kind of got my focus on other things right now. So I don't know if I'm going to play again. It was a lot of fun. It would take somebody being like, hey, you play paintball? Let's go play paintball. And then I'd probably go. I met a guy in a bar. It was in my apartment. I just went for a drink, and I sat next to this guy, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm Division 1 player. I'm like, no crap. Okay. I actually
Just out
know
of the blue?
You never do that. You never go out and you meet like semi-professional paintball players. That's just not a thing. There isn't a town where it's good. It's not like if you go to Bend, you're going to meet professional mountain bike players or mountain bike riders and professional climbers and things like that. You're not going to go to a town and meet people like that. So it was a very odd thing. And I kind of took it as an omen. And then I was like, yeah, I'm not competitive, and it won't be fun for me. And he'll just be like, what is this guy doing? So I kind of let it go. Again, I've got other hobbies to occupy me. I'm growing plants and stuff. And I've got the ski season that never ends, which is great. If I get back into anything, it might be mountain biking, but we'll see. Whatever Jenny wants to do, I think.
I think she usually is the leader of that.
Yeah.
The captain of that boat.
Yep.
So yeah, you just mentioned ski patrol. You've been a ski patrol volunteer for 17 years, and you did do some time in PA as a ski patrol, and then as well now in Mount Hood. What is it about ski patrol that really keeps driving you in? Is it the OCD or is it something else?
No, I mean, so you have these philosophical conversations with other patrollers who've been doing it for way too long. And you say, would you be skiing still? Think about the East Coast now. It's difficult to do. It's expensive. You got to drive a long ways to get to snow. And then when you get there, it's not good snow and it's a hill. It's not a mountain. So you know, would you still be a skier or a snowboarder if you didn't have ski patrol? And a lot of them say no. So it keeps me in the sport for sure. Moving out here, it's easy to still be in the sport because again, I've got a real mountain I can go to, several real mountains that I can go to. It's a different attitude toward the sport here. On the East Coast, you know, there were some down years. I was a shift captain for my patrol at Ski Liberty, Liberty Mountain Resort, who's now owned by Vail, which is really weird feeling. But they were basically a mom and pop mountain. The company that owned them, Snowtime, owned two other mountains and kind of juggled some in New York and Vermont at different times. They were, you know, they had affiliations or they owned part of a mountain or something like that. So we could go to bigger mountains, but it still isn't the West. It still isn't the Rockies. Um, so, you know, you do it for that long because you like the people, I think. You know, I had kind of settled into a group of people that maybe about 20 people that were on different shifts that I kind of floated around, and I was a captain of 15 patrollers, and you know, I do it with them, and I do it for them, and they do it for me, and that was kind of the thing that kept me in it more than the skiing, because more oftentimes than not, it was 40 degrees and raining, and nobody wanted to be outside, but we still had a great time because we'd sit in our top duty station and, you know, bullshit for 8 hours and then go have drinks afterwards. Um, you know, that's the thing that kept me in it then. Now it's very much about the skiing. I love the medical aspect of it. Let me back up a little bit. The reason why I got into ski patrol is kind of a fun story. Um, Sometime around the year 2000, 2001, I had taken a friend to Vermont for some real skiing. There's a mountain up there called Jay Peak, and it's the closest thing that we have to real snow um, and real mountains. It's really difficult if you go looking for it. So I took a friend up there who was a novice snowboarder, and we did a particularly rough section in the trees, and we're at the get back trail to kind of come back around to the front. And I said to him, okay, man, I'm going to tuck because there's no gradient here. And I'm afraid I'm going to get stuck. And I really don't like walking. If you end up walking, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do to help you. So I'll just wait for you at the bottom. So I got to the bottom. I turned around. He's not behind me. Well, I'm not surprised. Maybe he caught an edge and now he's walking or whatever. So yeah, I waited for 20 minutes, nothing. Waited for a half hour. Finally, I'm taking my board off. I'm walking up the hill and I see him and he's carrying his board. He's like, hey, oh, where were you at? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know where you were at? I can tell you where you're at. I just, like, what happened to you? I don't know. Okay, let's go inside and have a beer and talk about it or whatever.
Yeah.
So we get inside. I get him to take his gear off. He's still wearing his boots though. He's chain smoking cigarettes and he's saying, how long have I been asleep? How long have I been asleep? And I'm like, dude, you're not asleep. We've been on the hill all day. And he's like, huh. Well, how long have I been asleep? What are you talking about? It's like he's freaking out. He's not good. At one point he's reading the Bible and it's not really helping him. And I'm like, you're crazy, man. Like, I'm going to take you to ski patrol if you don't stop. I look back on it now. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I was threatening him. Like, stop being broken. Yeah. I'm going to take you to ski patrol and tell on you. So I did end up taking him to ski patrol. And the guy who looked at him, I don't know. It was kind of a very passe way of approaching it. I remember him kind of checking him out. And he didn't do a very good job. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. I think you got a concussion. You should probably go to the hospital. And we were like, okay, we're in nowhere, Vermont, almost on the Canadian border. Like, we don't know where to go. Ambulance, maybe? And they were like, just here's a map. You just go. So we crossed the border into Canada to go to the hospital. This was a time when you could do that. So we crossed the border and we're sitting there waiting for the x-ray tech because this was pretty late at night. By the time we got off the hill and everything, by the time we got to Canada, it was like 10 o'clock. So I had to wait for the x-ray tech to get in. And while we're there, I'm like, can I just like feel your head maybe? And I found a huge lump on the back of his head. And I realized how helpless I was at the time. And even looking back now, how severely injured he could have been. And it scared me, and I didn't like that feeling. As soon as we got back, I looked into ski patrol. And, well, I first looked into, like, EMT training and had kind of the same issue that I had with forestry where I was like, oh, it doesn't make a whole lot of money. I would really enjoy it, but yeah, I'm going to find a way to do this another way. I've always been really good about finding inexpensive ways to do things that I like to do. So I was like, ski patrol, I can volunteer. Takes a little bit of time, not at work time. It's my free time that I'm spending on this, but I get discounts in the end. I get pro deals and all that stuff and free lift tickets. And yeah, this sounds great. It became so much more when I got into it. And I never knew uh, camaraderie like I know with ski patrol. There's nothing else that I do in my life or have done in my life that is more focused on, the group and the people and everybody holding everybody else up and, that kind of thing. We had our awards banquet last night actually, and they virtually gave me my badge, and I've never been prouder. I've been a ski patroller for 17 years. I've gotten, multiple awards. I've been a shift captain, and just having that patch from Mount Hood Ski Patrol saying I'm actually at a real mountain now and I can hack it. That means a lot more. So it's in its new phase, but it's always been about the people. As long as I've understood what ski patrol was, it was about helping people and being a part of something bigger than yourself, and being in a group of talented individuals. The individuals' talents have changed now that I've moved out here. Is people who can mountain bike and kayak and raft and do all these things. Back east, it was politicians, doctors, dentists, people in D.C., lobbyists, lawyers, federal judges. I worked with, best I could understand is he was a spy. He was an international spy for the
What?
government. And he would never tell you any stories, but you knew about this. Had a 3-star general, I believe, that was on our patrol. Yeah. So really interesting people, really elevated my knowledge of the world, just being around those people. Definitely the most interesting people that I've met, aside from yourself, have been with Ski Patrol.
What? A spy for the government.
Yeah.
My
He was a very
God.
quiet guy. You could not get anything out of him. Super nice, but very quiet. Yeah.
You just have all sorts of stories, don't you?
Well, that's his story.
Oh,
I just met
man.
the guy.
Wow. I didn't even know where to go from there. Yeah. You and I relate to that also when it comes to every place you go, whether it is like volunteering or work, you make connections with the people, and they are the ones that make it special.
Yeah.
When I was working Premiere with you, it was yourself and a handful of other people. It almost actually was everyone that I interact with that made that place special for me, because I could just see what their lives are like and just talk with them outside of work about what's going on outside of work. And for you to find that for 17 years at different stops, that's just a testament to your ability to relate to people, to connect with people, and to just really, shine your personality and attract people that way. So I think with that's fantastic, man. Good for you.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride. That's how I met Jenny. I don't know if we've talked about that, but yeah.
You guys met at the West, because I sent you a topic sheet. You wrote down you guys met in the West. She moved with you across country, right?
Well, we met back east. Her father is a patent lawyer. Her mother is an accountant. They lived in D.C. I met her because her father was a ski patroller at Ski Liberty, and she thought that was something good for her. It was my rookie year and her candidate year, or her apprentice year, when she was going through training, that we met. So I've been in ski patrol 1 year longer than her. And we've been friends up until, I guess, it's 2 years now that we've been together as a couple. Before that, we were just friends for the longest time. And I'd never dated anybody else that skied. And that's a big thing. It's a big leap, is that we can do all these things together now. I love her as a person. I love her as a partner. But she also can join me on these adventures. And that is the thing. I don't have many friends out here yet, but we do everything as a group. It's not like, all right, have fun at home, I'm going out and going skiing.
Mm-hmm.
We can share that. So it was a very late in the life decision. I think back on the process that takes you from, I'm going to retire from this job that I have, and I'm going to stay with this, volunteer organization for the rest of my life and put in 50 total years of volunteerism with them. And I'm happy where I'm at. I own my house. I'm close to my parents. To switch that from, I'm moving to the other side of the country and starting over from scratch. I don't remember that process. I just remember focusing on Jenny and really wanting to be with her. So that's kind of what made it easy for me. I mean, it was pretty easy for her. She works for the EPA. She was working in DC, and she was tired of doing the thing. She was working the protection detail for the administrator of the EPA, and basically Secret Service for the EPA. And she hated it, and she checked a box off to be able to do that kind of work, and now wanted to get back into investigating. So she accepted basically the open position. I think there was one in Sacramento too, but like this was way better, obviously, to be here. She accepted the position and was like, okay, we've been dating for a couple months. You can follow me if you want. I'll give you a year and then I'm moving on. And I was like, all right, a year is pretty generous, A year is a lot to figure out. And I got here in less than a year, and it's been great. And we own a house together now.
Yeah, that is that's a pretty big strain on the relationship, though. But it seems like she's rolling with it. She's happy. Now, what is she doing now in Oregon as far as work?
She is a special agent for the EPA, so she is.
So that's what she's doing here. Okay.
Yep. She's a badge and gun carrying eco warrior. It's funding is kind of dictating the level of case that she gets on. But like, for instance, right now she's looking a lot at, maybe I shouldn't be talking about this on a public forum, but she's looking at diesel emissions and the things that people do to defeat the EPA regulated exhaust regulators.
Gee, yeah.
So coming from a world where I did things to my motorcycle and my Subaru WRX that made it kind of illegal to drive on the road, I'm like, I can help you with that. I know about these things, and I don't own those things anymore, so I am not a hypocrite, although I would in a second again. So we just won't tell Jenny that. She doesn't understand the mechanics of it anyway.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll hide that part. It's not lying. Yeah. It's just not sharing everything.
That's right.
There we go. Now, my last question for you. So, things are starting, as far as the world is concerned, things were starting to go on an upswing as far as things starting to get back to normalcy when it came to the coronavirus and dealing with that. How are you preparing yourself to get back into work? Because I know with Premier, they were, if you need to get into the office, that's fine, but to work from home as much as you can. How are you preparing yourself, and how is Jenny preparing herself to kind of hit the ground running as soon as everything is officially open and get back to normalcy?
Ooh. In sales, everything is heavily dependent on what everybody else is doing. So businesses need to reopen for me to call on them. Prospecting has not been easy, as you can imagine, just not getting through. Talking to some of the other salespeople, I'm not alone with that. But as things reopen, people are going to be looking for things to kind of get going again, get back to business as normal. There's a lot of weirdness in my life right now, just as far as just bought a house, only after being here for less than a year. I started a new job. I had been working the same place for 8-9 years or something. So there's a lot of gears shifting and everything feels new all the time. So getting back into this isn't going to be like a huge stretch, and I got to get back into the routine. I didn't really have a routine to begin with. I was still kind of figuring that out as I went. So it's going to be a newness. I think these things have, as you get older, this is definitely a unique situation, but you get a little more perspective on this type of thing, disruptions in your life that affect not just you, but other people. I look back at 9/11, and the effect that had on different generations of people. And the older generation of people was like, this is terrible. But we've kind of been through similar things in our lives where, everything is falling down around you and you have to push forward somehow. You look at the people who lived during World War II, same thing. The world is basically ending around them. It's hard to get anything to live a normal life, and yet they were able to push through and live on the other side of that. Well, so this too shall pass. We will get back to a sense of normalcy, and then there'll be another disruption that'll break our lives up, and we've got to get through it. That's what we do as humans, right?
Yep.
We push through to the other side, and we make it work for us and for the people around us, and we protect our friends and we protect our family, and we get through it. So I don't know that things are going to feel a ton different. I think things are going to look a little different. We're going to see a lot more masks being
Yes.
worn.
Yep.
Meetings are going to be handled differently. I think if there was one thing that made the biggest difference, it was not being able to shake hands.
Yeah. Human
That's a weird
interaction.
thing.
Not shaking hands, no hugging, and nothing like
Yeah.
that.
Um, you know, Sales is a thing where you've got to have multiple different levels of connection. And the first thing that you do is make the physical connection and, an eye connection. And you get close to somebody and you're like, hey, let's talk about you and what your problems are and how I can solve them.
Mhm.
So it's going to be tough to do that. That might be the biggest change overall that I might feel. Otherwise, businesses got to get back to business. So they're going to do what they have to do. I've already been to a restaurant, as I said. So the waiters and waitresses are wearing masks, and that doesn't feel like overly weird. Maybe we've been through this enough that like it's not weird, but who knows how long that'll last. So yeah, I don't know. I think I've done pretty well at rolling with the punches, and I think a lot of people are resilient in that way. So we'll just get back to what it is and wait for the next disruption and push through that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, some would say we're going through the next disruption right now with, everything going on from Minneapolis. But yeah, I have gone through some personal, personal kind of derailments in my life, especially recently. But you gotta keep pushing, because if you just let those derailments weigh you down, you're just going to not progress as a human. And us pushing through these like Corona times and everything else going on, we're going to be better as humans one way or another. So, we're you're in the customer service, your sales. So yeah, you are more customer person interacted versus myself, where I'm in the finance business now, where all of our interactions are either through phone, because all of our clients are like East Coast or just Central Time Zone. So it's it's been more or less the same where I am at work wise, but I am interested to see how Premier Press brings the fold back in, because you guys were operating with close to like what 200 people, maybe 150. So
Yeah.
that's something I'll also keep my eye on, from a distance, from
Yeah.
afar.
I think it's interesting just, all the businesses, how they're going to change. I mean, what a time for you to get into finance with the stock market crash. I mean, this is
Yeah,
a legitimate crash.
yeah,
The levels of drop are comparable to the depression. It's not good.
yeah,
Unemployment is comparable to the depression. It's not good. Actually, I might have my numbers a little bit incorrect, but yeah, it's bad. And so there will be a rebound. There always is.
Mhm.
How good it is and what the world looks like after this, we'll see.
We'll see.
But it's like you said, you have to. I'm gonna elaborate on your words, but you have to make a decision to push forward. If you don't, you can let the world happen to you, and we see people like that all the time. And if you can be okay with that, great. But I don't know too many people that are. Um, you still want the way of life that you want for yourself, and you have to get that. Nobody's going to give it to you. So, kudos to you for pushing through, the speed bumps in your life and being who you want to be. That's what it's all about, right? It's about being who you want to be in the end.
Yeah, and then if those speed bumps make you a better you, then They're the speed bumps you needed to go through.
Exactly.
All right, Mark. Thank you again so much for sitting down and chatting with me. It's been a long time since I've seen you in person because I left Premiere on January-ish. So it's good to see you again and see the facial hair is still staying strong. The hair is still staying strong. Tell Jenny I said hello. I don't think I've met her yet, but I'm looking forward to hanging out with both of you guys. Once it's all over, we can go grab a beer or whatever bar is
We'll
next
have
to
to,
that.
yeah.
Do you have any follow-up questions for the guest? Put them in the comments below, and I will work to get them answered for you. For more content from KC Media, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And for more interviews from Keoni Chats, please follow us on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Until then, guys, see you then.